welcome back, everybody. So we're going to have three speakers representing two organizations, Nate and Eden with the Neil Squire Society and Micaela from the President's Group. Again, same style throughout the whole conversation. Feel free to put your questions in the chat, or what you can do is just wait till afterwards when we're going to have a general open Q&A. So with that being said, we'll do the introductions. Nate is from Neil Squire Society and fills the role of employer outreach developer. Utilizing his long-standing background in retail, wholesale, and business-to-business sales and marketing activities, he is tasked with educating businesses in BC about the program and how it benefits working and volunteering people in the province. Nate joined the Neil Squire team in 2015 and loves the work in the community and enjoys helping companies and people achieve all that they can. His colleague Eden is a job developer at the Neil Squire Society and their Creative Employment Options program based in their head office in Burnaby, BC. Eden supports clients in finding and maintaining employment. Micaela is a disabled professional with a focus on the equitable community building and broad systems change and a strong knowledge of accessible marketing and communications practices. She has her BA in Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies, Indigenous Studies, and Communications from SFU. In addition, she has been an activist and advocate for disability communities for over a decade, working to improve representation, healthcare access, and accessible employment. As a person with spinal muscular atrophy, she knows firsthand the challenges of finding work with a visible disability and hopes through this work that we can press forward with future opportunities for others in BC. When she's not working, Micaela can be found exploring Vancouver's cafes and being a homebody with her partner, Yorkie, and kitten. Over to you, Nate.
Any pictures of the kitten, Micaela? Hey, really pleased to be here. I'm a big fan of Micaela and the President's Group. And Yat Lee over there, they're doing fantastic work in spreading the news about inclusivity and hiring people with disabilities and all the benefits to that. So I'm really pleased to be here. The program I'm going to briefly go over with you is the Work BC Assistive Technology Services Program. We're in year 5. We have funding confirmed with Work BC till March 31st, 2027. At that point, the province will launch, hopefully, a new program that addresses the needs for accommodations. So Work BC Assistive Technology Services provides assistive technology or supports, or called an accommodation from a workplace standpoint, to individuals with disabilities. The definition of a disability in our program is any situation that is temporary, permanent, or episodic in nature that causes a physical or cognitive barrier to one's activities. As mentioned earlier on, there's two groups of people that we focus on. One is a Work BC Employment Services client, and they have a barrier to job search, a training program that they're put through, or the eventual job they secure. Or the second group of people are people that are in the workforce, employed part-time, full-time, or self-employed, mostly working in a smaller business. But I'll share two exceptions to that. Work-related assistive technology solutions are based on individual requirements and work situations. It's not cookie cutter. Nothing about the work that our team does is cookie cutter. When somebody gets approved, they get a detailed assessment by one of our occupational therapists. In almost every case, we have 6 occupational therapists in the province. 5 of them have their masters of OT. These are some of the most qualified people in the country to provide these services, and they work with an amazing team of assistive technology specialists. Most of them have a rehab assistant degree and then take a path of assistive technology, which is truly a lifelong learning journey. And we provide these services right throughout the province of BC. AskJan.org. Ryan, if you want to put that in the chat, please. AskJan.org. www.askjan.org is the Job Accommodation Network. It's a resource in the States where you can put in a barrier or disability, and it'll give you a couple examples of different assistive technologies that'll work. It's a wonderful resource. Our team uses it from time to time. I often get asked, what can we help with? Well, any barrier to a work-related activity or training-related activity at Work BC, if there's a tool that's high-tech, low-tech, software, hardware, ergonomics, hearing aids, visual aids, not eyeglasses, but more robust solutions, we can help with that. Chronic pain is the #1 disability in Canada, so we do a lot of ergonomics, which can be a supportive ergonomic chair, a sit-to-stand workstation, a footrest for somebody, people with mobility challenges, canes, crutches, orthotics, prosthetics, workplace access and modification for eligible employers. That is a little more detailed for me to spend a lot of time in, but it could be ramp access, could be those buttons that open doors for people with mobility barriers. I touched earlier on in the call, some of you might have been on the call with us. This program can do vehicle mods or wheelchair mods, meaning adding power to a manual chair or doing a vehicle conversion to help somebody get to and from work. It has to be about getting to and from work as the driver. Now, the individual has to supply the car. They have to get licensed to drive that modified motor vehicle. But this program can help with the funding to modify that vehicle for ramp access, a lift for the chair, and what have you, or depending on many factors, obviously. Hearing aids. Now, I said most of the coverage is for people in a small business or self-employed. The to and from work piece and hearing aids, most people will qualify for at least some coverage because those two things fall outside of the duty to accommodate by an employer. Hearing aids have been a big part of this program. In BC, a pair of hearing aids is $4,000 to $8,000. There's no coverage through our medical service plan in BC. And even if you got good benefits at work, $500 to $1,000 is usually the total amount that you're going to receive for coverage. Now, when somebody is employed or unemployed, ministry makes us look at their income less expenses. So if they're part of a family unit, family income less family expenses. The good news is only in a 30-day window. We don't look at a full year's income. It's a 30-day window. And if somebody has the ability to contribute, it's a contribution model. If they don't, program's well funded. We're going to put in the chat when Eden gets her chance to speak, or I will, some information about how you can attend a full 30-minute webinar on this topic that we run Wednesdays from 12:30 to 1. There is a lot of information to share, but if you know somebody that's got a barrier to employment-related activities, and there's a tool out there that can help minimize or overcome that, there's a good chance that this program will be able to help in some fashion. And the assessment piece that we do, which is really the most important part of the process, is always fully covered. It is not part of the cost-sharing arrangement. And I hand it off to my co-worker, Eden, from the CEO program, which is the Creative Options program. Eden joined us from Victoria, about a year ago now?
No, it was actually in the summer, so 8 months.
It was only in the summer.
Oh, a little bit halfway.
A little bit past halfway.
Yeah, but I've been with Neil Squire for over a year. I was the case manager out in Victoria, which was great, but I've always had an itch for Vancouver, and a position became available for a job developer position, and I said, great, and they kept me. So I was like, great. And here I am. All right, I will just share my screen. Now I have our general, let me just see. I have our general kind of overview of all our quick services with Neil Squire. I won't touch on all of them, but I will touch on the majority of our employment specifically program. Okay, good. So we can see them. Yeah. That's fine. We'll just go this way. Perfect. So creative employment options. So we're helping people with disabilities prepare for, obtain, and maintain employment. Neil Squire, as Nate kind of touched on, has a bunch of different programs. Lots of great things are being done there. I'll kind of briefly touch on a few, but mostly focus on creative employment options. So just a little bit, we really focus on innovation, digital literacy, and employment and assistive technology. As I will just kind of switch down because that just goes over all those big topics, but we really want to highlight our, for example, our Makers Making Change, which is a great program that helps with affordable assistive technology devices through 3D printing. Very great. We also have computer digital comfort programs and digital literacy programs to assist with learning your computer skills, whether or not you're someone who needs that for returning to work, or if you just kind of want to touch up on those skills, that's something we can offer. It's one-to-one computer tutoring. It's no cost and it's a supportive environment. And you can also get a refurbished computer if that's something you need. Along with that is Digital Jumpstart, which really focuses on the computer literacy and getting someone ready to go, maybe for their next steps, either during a job placement or one of maybe switching into our creative employment options program. With that, we also have a great solutions department. It has a team of occupational therapists and assistive technology specialists who find the most effective ergonomic or assistive technology solutions to target each individual's specific needs. With that as well, our hearing solutions, very similar and kind of also does, offer the latest advances in hearing technology at a price that is affordable. All right, this is what I wanted to more get to, which is the bread of why I'm here. So our creative employment options, it's a unique, comprehensive, and participant-centered program designed to develop the skills required to help individuals achieve their employment goals. So one of the great things about our program is we really meet people where they're at. So if you come into our program, we have clients all the way from maybe even if you're still in high school or you're just recently graduated and you want to get more information about where to go next and what field might be a good fit for you, that's something we can help with. But I also have clients who have had very fulfilling careers and had a gap away from working and are wanting to re-enter the job industry and need some help kind of navigating how to find the job market nowadays with all our online resources and tools. As well, we also have clients who come in and aren't sure where they want to go with whatever they're doing and need a field and help to kind of find out what's the best field for them. Our services are in 6 different provinces: BC, Saskatchewan, Ontario, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. With that being said, we also have remote and virtual services, so we can do Canadian-wide if need be. Even though we're in Burnaby, I have clients all the way from Abbotsford. Yeah. And so the program offers individualized and planned or group-based learning environment. It's career and personal development, wellness for work, job search, and customized to meet your employment needs. So if you're someone who comes in with a fantastic resume, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on resumes with you. We're going to work on something, maybe if you need more job search or field navigation, or maybe you need a bit more help with your wellness for work and making a routine that'll really let you thrive in your job environment. We also have wage subsidies available, which can help with sometimes funding our clients into getting their foot in the door for a position and get some great training in. And that being said, we have some great connections with employers through that as well. As well as all our clients in our program gets an ergonomic assessment through our solutions department to connect with and see if there's anything they can do to provide you with a better supportive work setup. So suitable candidates, again, we kind of have a wide variety. One of our biggest criteria is you have to have a self-identified disability. So that is, we don't want to put more barriers in. So no doctor's note, no formal diagnosis. You just have to identify yourself as someone with a disability. So this could be all the way from mental health basis, spinal cord injury, vision loss, cerebral palsy, and so on. We touch on several different modules. I won't go over them all because we don't have the time for that today. But again, it's really every module, we kind of customize it for the person and what they need. So every plan is going to be different. Not every person's going to touch on every module. And we'll connect with them based on, we want to make our time worth it and make it that you're getting, as a client, people are getting out of it as much as they can. And they're not just listening to you drone on about resumes or cover letters. As well as our wellness to work. So we focus on also how you can create an overall environment that'll help you thrive, even if that's at home, can help you thrive in your working life. And job development. So at the kind of end, when you're a bit more clear about what you want to get and what you're interested in, you get to the job developer stage. So you connect with me or another job developer, and at that point we get into more active job hunting and job seeking and making a plan for how we're going to get you a really supportive ongoing employment. So that was kind of a brief overview. We have career facilitators, case managers, and job developers. So you're not just working with one person, unless you might be out in Victoria or Penticton, because those are a bit more remote locations. But we have, if you're with our Burnaby team, you see several different people, but it's still one-on-one employment support. So here at the bottom of the screen, that's our case managers contact info. I'll also be providing our website because all of our up-to-date information is on that. Yeah, other than that, that's kind of our brief overview. I want to be mindful of time, and any questions or anything I didn't touch on, please ask me afterwards and I can hopefully help. Great, and I think I'll just hand it over to Ryan then.
Great job, Ian. Yeah, we're going to throw it over to Micaela for her chat on the President's Group.
Thanks, Ethan. So my name is Micaela Evans. I'm the Accessibility and Community Engagement Manager at Accessible Employers, which is an initiative of President's Group. I've been working here for 4 years and previously worked with the great folks at Spinal Cord Injury BC. I'm a quadriplegic with a degenerative and episodic physical disability myself. And I also just had emergency eye surgery a little bit ago. So apologies if I'm struggling to see my notes a little bit today. I'm going to talk a little bit about our work at President's Group and Accessible Employers, and then connect it to how folks with disabilities may interact with our services and offer support where I can. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of us before. You may have, you may not have, but we were established by the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. The President's Group is a network of BC business leaders focused on increasing employment opportunities for people with disabilities. The President's Group committee is composed of 25 CEOs and acts as an advisory committee to the minister directly. The companies involved range from large crown corporations to small tech and food companies. A few of them that you might know are BCAA, BCLC, KPMG, TransLink, and Pacific Blue Cross. The President's Group initiative includes community-based programming, which is Accessible Employers. We're shifting our name a little bit as I speak right now, so we're going to be going by Accessible Employers in the future, just to separate a little bit more from that board. These programs under Accessible Employers support employers across BC in hiring and retaining people with disabilities by increasing awareness, providing education, distributing resources, and developing purpose-driven solutions. Ultimately, this work will continue to increase employment outcomes for people with disabilities, primarily through shifting attitudinal barriers that still strongly persist in BC businesses of all sizes. We provide hundreds of employers and tens of thousands of employees access to online learning courses, to events and training opportunities, collaboration with other employers, and direct support from our staff. Our goal is for the workplace access to be the norm instead of an exception, built into policies and procedures rather than one-off exceptions from dedicated managers. Not sure if that's any of your experiences, but that's definitely been mine in the past when I was hired for unconventional roles or in typically inaccessible spaces. It was really often dependent on an individual themselves putting in the effort and making it happen. We're sometimes criticized a little bit for our unique take on tackling employment from the top and from the top down versus from the bottom up. And that's oftentimes where disabled individuals don't have a presence at the top. But not only do some of our senior leaders have invisible or not publicly disclosed disabilities, but having the buy-in from senior leaders really goes a long way in accomplishing our goals. And that's where our advisory committee's presence and the buy-in of senior leaders at all the organizations we work with is really crucial. Employee and management turnover is really frequent right now in the job market. And having that business owner or CEO who's committed to training organizationally wide means that when an HR leader moves on from their role, the momentum doesn't get lost with them. And people in management roles who perhaps would still rather not acknowledge that 26% of Canadians have disabilities can't actively exclude within their organizations quite as easily. So what does this really mean for folks like yourselves who may have jobs, you may be looking for jobs, you might be considering or not considering employment? What we don't directly work with job seekers like Neil Squire does, but the majority of our employer partners work with different employment service organizations to try to reach these job seekers with disabilities that may be yourselves or may not be. Many of our employers post available roles through organizations like Neil Squire, and particularly our partner called Can Win as well, as we're housed by the same overarching organization. They support both the employers as well as the job seekers and can help you actually make those matches for employment. If you haven't worked with these organizations before, I'd really encourage you to give it a try, as our employers are actively seeking out folks with disabilities and often tell us that they actually can't find them because they don't know where these people are and they think that they're not applying for roles actively. But in reality, they just often can't access them. Our employers are always working behind the scenes to improve their policies and processes in environments that aren't always welcoming. This isn't always visible to the job seeker as much as we wish it could be. We're a team of 2 disabled staff members and supported by a huge network of disabled employees and contractors every step of the way. If you're a job seeker currently or in the future, I encourage you to seek out employers who might have statements on their job descriptions or on their websites that say that they're going to accommodate you, or that they have this outward facing commitment to hiring inclusively and following through with their policies. If you see a job description that has these statements, but they expect you to be in an office all the time, or maybe they don't mention that accommodations are available right from the get-go, don't be afraid of asking. You have these rights as a job seeker, and you can ask employers to follow through on this. Employers, especially larger ones, have to accommodate in the job hiring process, and as well as for existing employees. If you feel like you are great working with data or with graphic design or communications, or all these roles that we've seen can be done virtually during COVID, employers are recognizing that they have to continue this while we're in this post-COVID or furthering COVID time. And it's a very common accommodation to ask for flexible hours, or to work from home some days a week, or to work from home full time. I used to never apply for roles that didn't list remote work policies, but so many more employers are now aware that this is possible. And I encourage you to ask for these accommodations, even if you don't see them listed, or you think that maybe they wouldn't consider that, because often employers don't necessarily put that out there, but they are willing to accommodate employees more than you necessarily would guess right off the bat. Many of us are still having to constantly educate those around us about barriers or accessibility needs, and employment does still require this of us, unfortunately. But there are employers who are eagerly trying to get better at this, and they're trying to accommodate this job market that often people have opted out of or aren't applying for jobs with them because they don't realize opportunities are there to be accommodated. Employers are struggling to hire and retain good employees right now, and they're really looking for ones that will commit to the work and are as talented and dedicated as job seekers with disabilities may be. We're happy to answer questions. We're happy to help make connections if there's anyone looking for work, or if you have questions about how accommodations actually happen. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Good job. Yes, we're going to open the floor to some questions. I had one. This goes to any of our speakers, but listening to Nate when he threw out the term duty to accommodate. So we do have a lot of, or I personally know a lot of our peers that quote unquote don't want to rock the boat, meaning they don't want to approach their employer if they feel like I'd rather sort of struggle at the workplace than seen as being inconvenient or annoyance. I'm wondering if you have any advice or suggestions, and it's to anybody that wants to answer that.
Okay, well, let me take a stab at that first, and I'm going to give you a couple perspectives. First of all, from a standpoint of Neil Squire, we believe, of course, that the individual has the right to or not to disclose. Okay. Right below that overarching fundamental belief, we believe in disclosure because we believe that it opens up many opportunities to help. Okay. So does that solve the problem? 100% it does not. Let me throw this at you from the perspective of an employer. And let's talk just for a second of an employer that you're already working with. How much does it cost to replace you? Thousands of dollars. When you leave, what goes out the door with you? Whatever intellectual property you have gained in the years that you've worked in the job that makes the company more valuable, allows it to provide a higher level of service or whatever it is. So in many cases, it's much easier and simpler and makes a better business decision to just accommodate an existing employee than trying to find a whole new one. Is it an easy conversation to have? I'm not going to pretend it is. But in most cases, especially these days, where there's been so much through this tight job market we had, and I know things are changing, but it always will change up and down. Companies realize that most companies realize their most important asset are us, the people that are doing the work. So have a conversation, tell them that and here's one last thing I'll say. One thing that you'll hear a lot in business circles is don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. So you can come to them with, I have a situation, but maybe you can come to them with a few ideas also of something that'll help you overcome the barrier. Now that might not happen every case, but I think it's a way different conversation that's good today than it was bad, a few years ago would be what I have to say.
Great. I also kind of just jumping off your point, Nate, I also saw that Darren just mentioned in the chat best practices for timing for disclosure. And, again, disclosure is an incredibly personal choice and every situation is different. I wish I had a script that everyone could use for every single employer, every single position, and it would just be that easy. So for timing with disclosure, there's a few things to think about. If an accommodation is needed for a job interview, for example, maybe you have trouble walking upstairs, you need to know if they have an elevator in the building. It's often good to let them know right off the bat because that's kind of a thing that you need that accommodation for the interview. And it's in that way, can be a bit difficult because it feels like you don't have a lot of money in the bank with an employer when you have to do that disclosure. But it also sets kind of a tone for knowing how they'll react to that accommodation needed. Other than that, that's something, it's really hard. I work with a number of my clients talking about disclosure and what's the best time. I'm working with one right now who's been in a position for a couple months and is still kind of unsure about their comfortability level with disclosure, but is in the need of accommodations. So that's the important thing is quite often if accommodation is something that you're in need of, it can be really positive to disclose and early on, because then it kind of sets the employer up to know what they're to be expected. And, then they know how to properly support you. But that is something that I recommend, chatting about it with either if you have a job facilitator or a job developer, chat about it with them, chat about it with your friends and family if not, and brainstorm different ways and different comfortability levels because every situation is going to be different. I also just wanted to touch on something briefly Micaela said was, it also changes with how big the employer is. So with the duty to accommodate is there's something called undue hardship. So if an accommodation is quite costly, that could be an undue hardship for a smaller business. But if you're looking at bigger businesses like Bell or Walmart or something, an organization that has quite some good funding in place, chances are that would not fall under undue hardship. So, and what we're seeing is often accommodations that are needed are actually pretty low cost at most, typically or average. I think they're around $200 odd. And so, like Nate said, that's a low amount compared to all the training, time, and energy that goes into connecting with like a candidate.
Yeah. To add on to that, one really great approach that some of our really large, we're talking 5,000 plus employers are starting to take, is they're actively seeking out accommodation options through different directories like that askjan.org. And so if they have a lot of IT or security protocols that it would take to get accommodations in place once someone is hired, they're already creating a directory ahead of time to say, okay, if we had a deaf employee come in, here's who we could contact for ASL translation. Or if we had someone who's sensitive to light, here's where we would buy certain technologies to assist them. And so they already have all that stuff on hand so that if someone does come in and needs some of those services, they already have them approved by IT if it needs to be added to a computer, or they already have the approvals so that it can be done quicker and faster and be more accessible to the person so that there isn't all those kinds of delays off the bat. And then for smaller companies, again, like Neil Squire was saying, if it does become an undue hardship, there's a lot of services that can step in, like the assistive technology, like wage subsidy programs and things like that, that can assist those smaller businesses. So if someone hires someone and perhaps they don't disclose right away, and then once you're on the job, they realize that they're going to need certain physical modifications done to the workplace, where can they suddenly access some funds to put an automatic door in, or to make it so the person doesn't have to constantly be lifting things in the workplace. Those things can be done after the fact to support that employee. And it doesn't fall on a small business to have to pay for those things.
Okay, this might be more of a personal question, but as somebody with a disability who's been in the job market, when do you personally disclose? How do you find that's gone, that process for you?
Mine's really obvious because I work in the disability field. So my experience has always been very obvious. And that did really, unfortunately, impact me one time because someone could kind of guess from my resume that I probably had a disability. And I didn't even disclose right off the bat. And they actually illegally told me that they didn't give me an interview because they assumed I probably used a wheelchair and their place wasn't physically accessible. So those instances may happen, but unfortunately, fortunately, that isn't happening as much anymore. That was about 10 years ago. That's very much illegal, and I would say that it's very uncommon for that to happen these days. People are much more willing to hear what your needs are and be willing to accommodate. And for the most part, like people are, after COVID, like willing to have flexible work environments and adapt to your needs versus thinking that a work environment has to be in person.
Yeah, that's great. We had a question in the chat. How do I know what I need? I seem to be managing fine, but I do get really tired throughout the day. So, I mean, sometimes people don't know their limitations. Sometimes they're still kind of recovering. They're making progress. They're figuring things out. So, do you have any suggestions or tips for people to navigate that when they're kind of in that zone of figuring things out for themselves?
That's a really interesting question, right? Because certainly what somebody would back off and say from an employment standpoint, let's put disability aside for a minute. We all should take breaks. We all should try and pace ourselves. And we're all a little different in that, like, I'm a morning person. Like, I do my best work before 2 in the afternoon. From 2 to 5, I'm usually, you're not getting the best of me right now at 7 o'clock. Let's be honest, okay? But I know some people, man, you don't get the best of them till after 6 p.m. So we're all a little different. So pacing. Now, if it is a matter of how the job wears you down, that is part of what an ergonomics assessment is. So when you look up ergonomics, it's about fitting the task to the human not fitting the human to the task. And sometimes people are put in a job situation or job task where it's really not made for them, or it would break their body down quickly, or many factors. So an assessment can help if they have access to that. Again, the program that we shared with you today may be a solution for part of that, because it does, again, the most important thing it provides is the assessment.
Another option as well is to look on that website again, Ask Jan, for different solutions rather than trying to figure out on your own to see what other people have used. You can go by symptoms. So if it's that you're feeling physically tired, there's things for that. If it's a pain issue, there's ergonomics for that. So you can go by solution rather than necessarily like your condition. And that may be able to find some things or some tech that you've never heard of.
And just for a reminder for people, that is askjan.org. And Kayla mentioned how she got a question of, do we have a list of employees or services providers that we work with? And they do. They have a directory at accessibleemployers.ca/members-type.
Yeah, so you can search by employers who have committed publicly to being more inclusive and working on their procedures. Or you can click on the service providers button and you can search by the services that they offer. So if you're looking for employment services, or if you're looking for ASL interpreters or things like that, you can search by those.
You know, I got injured in 2009, and when I got injured, I just assumed that the only jobs I could find were entry level, ripping movie tickets at a theater, that sort of thing. I just didn't know what I could achieve. And I found that there are people working for big corporations, and then you would hear some complaints that they're only the entry level positions. They don't typically hire for a higher level. I know education plays a lot into that, but do you think that perception is still real out there, or do you think things have gotten better? What are your thoughts on that?
I can speak to being in this for about 4 years, and I've definitely seen a significant shift. I think the employers who do it the best are looking at it in terms of flexibility rather than specific criteria that they need to meet. So the ones who are trying to do it from a case by case perspective, or anticipating needs before having someone come in the door, are often the ones who are able to do it the most successfully versus ones who are just trying to like check little boxes off their checklist. And there's definitely been a shift, but there's also a lot of ways to go, and there's definitely still going to be employers who just aren't there yet. Maybe they think that diversity and inclusion in general is nonsense. There's still going to be those people, but accessibility as a whole is definitely making a shift.
You know, I think part of it is like a lot of different jobs, getting in and then showing where you can make a difference. And, you know, the higher you go up in the company, in most cases, the less you're working with these and your back, and the more you're working with what's between your ears. And so do we have a long way to go, like Micaela says? Yeah, we do. There's still lots of people that don't get it. But when it comes to proving yourself in an organization, way more of that happens where there isn't a physical aspect to the job. And sometimes you got to go in there and sell yourself. And that's a big part of it. So would you go in there and ask about an accommodation? Yeah, if you need one. But they got to know that, yeah, I got a disability, but I have way more abilities. And will I need this accommodation to do this part of my work? Let's talk about all the skills I bring to the table that's going to solve the business problems you're currently experiencing in your business, and why you're trying to hire somebody like me, and kind of switch the conversation. I think there's a lot of ways to accomplish that. Do you need the right audience to make that point in front of you? 100% you do. But you got to go in there and sell yourself as the problems you can solve and the work you can do, not the barriers that you face to accomplish them. Because in 2024, we have lots of tools to help you do that.
That's great. We have a question from James.
Can you hear me? I'm okay. Yeah, great. I have a question for Eden about the creative employment options program. You mentioned that you have some virtual services available. I'm fairly rural, and I know some other people on the call are as well. Are there limitations to the virtual services that you provide? Like, can you still enroll in the program? And I just was curious to know what that looks like. I'm very rural, so.
Okay. Yeah, so it's really case by case basis. I have clients that I have never seen in person, and all we do is online services. Our teams, so our BC teams are in Victoria, Burnaby, and Picticton. So those are the kind of the areas we know. And depending on the person and how rural you are, sometimes we'll connect. Let's say you're a bit more inland, maybe closer to Penticton than Burnaby. We'll connect with our Picticton office and see if that's something they're able to provide. And same with the island. So, the island is kind of its unique one, but I've had clients when I was out there. I had a client up in Nanaimo for a bit, I believe. And so we really, I would say, honestly, reach out to us. That's the best way to see about the case and inquire. But we are, like Micaela said, we kind of do stuff. We have some eligibility criteria, but we want to do stuff in the mind of being a bit flexible so that we don't create more barriers for individuals.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
That is awesome. Do we have any last questions before we wrap up? So there were a lot of really good resources talked about and links that were shared in the chat. So just for those that are watching this video after the fact, we'll make sure to include all this information in the description so people can stay tuned. Yeah, and on that note, we're really appreciative of our speakers, everything that they provided us tonight. A lot of really good discussion, and just for people know that we are going to be doing this again tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to have the sexual health team along with James present. So it just goes beyond sexuality. So it's everything from intimacy, self-worth, general health. It's going to be a really good one. And we're also going to be doing adaptive rec equipment. So encouraging people to get out and kind of think outside the box of how they can get back out into nature. So if you can, please join for those. And also let people know that I host the ambulatory group that would meet every Thursday, first Thursday of the month, sorry, at 5 p.m. And on that note, if there's anything else, appreciate having everybody here, and drive home safe. Enjoy your Madonna concert, Nate, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Thanks for the opportunity to share today, Ryan. Good to see you, Eden. Good job, and good job as always, Micaela.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you,
It was a
everyone.
pleasure to be here.
Take care.